day it's so depressing. It's amazing that anybody ever gets clean. I mean, it's and when you're so low, you think to yourself, how am I going to ever pick myself up out of this? I mean, at one point, there's a story in my book where I talk about I'm sleeping on the street, I have warrants, I'm strung out on multiple drugs, I haven't seen my family in X and 3 years or whatever it is. Like, where do I even get started? Like, where do you even start? And so when I was in court that day, I had decided, a month prior when they arrested me, that I was going to actually try to get clean. But then I have this, the district attorney wanting to send me to prison. And I already knew if I was going to go to prison, I wasn't going to get out of that life, because I'd be completely immersed in it when I got to prison. That's what I would have done, because that's what's expected of you when you're in that life, is that if you're going to send me to prison, I'm just going to play that role. So I knew my only chance was going to be they were going to send me to this rehab as a rehab for criminal offenders. So everyone in there was from prison or from jail, and that program doesn't even exist anymore. I mean, a lot of the services that I have that don't even exist
He agreed
anymore.
to send me to the program instead of prison. Just what we were just talking about, that little cliche there. And if I did not complete the program, I would be automatically sentenced to 3.5 years in state prison. It was a risk, but I was willing to take. I finally started to breathe. I never felt jail. I never left jail and stayed clean. In fact, I had never stayed clean while in jail. The cravings had always overtaken my desire to try something different. A person in the know, like myself, would be in access to a wide array of substances even behind bars. For real.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I mean, you can get pretty much anything in jail if you can pay for it or you have access to it. Because there's just no way, when you have all these people who use drugs who are going to jail, that you can screen and sell them, that you can screen them for absolutely everything. It's just not humanly possible.
Jail is just as bad as the street.
Well, it's not as bad as the street, but it definitely it's interesting. It's a whole other society. I mean, definitely when you have spent any kind of time in jail, there's routines and ways that you behave and sort of interactions that you have. It's almost, in some ways, it's like its own world. And then there's the outside world, and in some ways it's easier to engage in the little hustle and bustle there than even think about the outside world, especially if you know you're not getting out. I mean, in my case, I've been incarcerated for 9 months of my life, so when you're in there for a certain period of time and you know you're not getting out, then you just have to participate in whatever it is that you're doing there. And I mean, the San Francisco County Jail has a lot of different kind of programming available for people, but sometimes you don't feel like participating in that. They try to get you in a lot of activities, but I mean, the criminal justice system needs to be completely overhauled. So I work as a administrator in I do work in the county, public health work, and I'm also a convicted felon. And so 20-something years ago, I was convicted with a $20 bag of drugs, and so that affects the whole rest of my life. So in certain states, I don't have the right to vote, I don't have civil rights, and I'd be a person that you would think, that would, it's going through the process of expungement can be very, very complicated. It's not something that just automatically happens. People think that you somehow that just drops off of your record, and that's not actually what happens. And then being a convicted felon trying to go get a job can be very, very difficult. And getting a job, there's lots of research indicates that can be the difference between you getting out and staying out and going back in, like having the ability to care for yourself, having meaningful activity going on in your life. So one of the things I was grateful for is that I was able to go through a program for ex-offenders that really helped me sort of get my life together, and they found a place that hired people even if they had a felony, which can be very, very challenging. I mean, I have some people that contact me from various states, especially places like Florida and different places where felons, their opportunities to get jobs are very, very limited as a felon. I think we incarcerate way too many people in the United States. And even when I was in there in a place like San Francisco, one of the people I was in jail with, she went to prison for 3 bags of weed, and she's a convicted felon now. Now she's actually a nurse, but the process of having to try to get that off of your record, and you would think at a place like San Francisco that people consider to be super liberal, that wouldn't have happened, but our drug laws have been overhauled, but at the national level, they definitely need to be overhauled.
You think that'll happen?
Not under the current administration, no. There would have to be, some of that had been changing, but I do some work with people from the federal court system. I go and speak to the women's prison in Dublin, and some of the people that you see in prison, you see how they ended up in prison. We have so many people in prisons now, they have learning disabilities, they can't even read. We have an education system where we're having people to turn out that can't even read. How is that going to affect a person's opportunities in life when they don't even have the ability to read? And so that's a lot of the people that you see in the jails are people that had they had very limited opportunities, and now their opportunities are even less coming out as a convicted felon. So. Under the current administration, they're talking about reinstituting parts of the drug war, so we'll have to see. Not that we had gotten away from that, but even like enforcement of the laws in states that where marijuana is legal, they're talking, recreational marijuana is legal, they're talking about doing federal sweeps. So we'll have to see how that plays itself out.
That's going to catch a lot of people up. I want to ask you something. I want to get personal with you, okay?
Okay.
All right. Tell me about the man that you have in your life.
So my husband is, we've been together for almost 17 years. He's what they call a normie. He's just a really nice person. I don't know. I always kind of went for killers and thugs.
Whoa. Baby girl, say that again.
Killers.
Bad boy. Woo! You just blew me away. Oh God! Woo! Have mercy on me. Killers. Bad guys. Super bad guys.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know they were killers, but it just worked out that way. But there's been a few of them.
And this guy's really stuck with you.
Yeah, he's a really nice person. He works in the trades. We've been together a long time. Have 3 kids together. My sort of criteria for a relationship used to be like, have you spent time in prison? Do you have tattoos on your neck? Like that was pretty much it. There wasn't a lot. It was all the aesthetic, the way the person looked, and so I ended up getting my ass whooped in some of those relationships because that's what happens when you have no criteria, no self-esteem. But then I spent a lot of time by myself when I had quit using drugs, and I didn't even want to date people. I didn't go out with people. I just wanted to be by myself to figure out what a healthy relationship even was, and having even a healthy relationship.
That was a smart thing to do. That's smarter than most people.
It was. I think it's very, very hard to be by yourself, and being by myself. There's an expression, I can do bad by myself. It's like, well, okay, I'm going to try just to be by myself and see what happens. And that really sort of made the difference for me in my life because I actually had some criteria. Like, one of the things was, can I meet your friends? Like, do you have a job? Can I meet your friends? What is your relationship with your mother like? How do you treat me? How do you talk to me? Really looking at, before you sleep with the person, really looking into who the person is, because usually after you sleep with the person, then it's too late, then you're your accessory to the felony, you're kind of stuck with that person. So that almost 2 years I spent by myself, it was a good time. It was hard at first, but then it gets easier. Then it's like...
That's a lifetime for some people, 2 years.
Oh yeah.
That's a hard lifetime.
Oh yeah, it was like...
And they revert back to their old ways.
It definitely is hard being by yourself, and especially when you're used to a certain level of companionship. When you're in the drug life, the person that you're with is with you literally 24/7 because you don't go to a job necessarily or whatever. So having someone who, had being in a healthy relationship, it was definitely a switch for me. But that's how I want to live. I don't want to live my life looking over my shoulder, wondering who's going to come up on me or whatever. So, I mean, it really, and I have spent a lot of time trying to teach other women about, some of the things that have worked for me. But, I mean, really, you deserve to be with someone who's going to respect you and cherish you or whatever. And that's what I looked for. I wanted to find that.
But you know what? I look at a lot of the young girls. They choose those kind of guys that are bad boys, and they end up getting their asses whipped. They end up getting demeaned. They're talked down to. And then all of a sudden, they have no concept of reality of who they are, what they are, and they go into depression. And then they follow the life of the guy who they're with.
So I think for myself, I was sort of, being with a father who was an alcoholic and was abusive, I was conditioned to that. I was conditioned to think that yelling and all that kind of stuff, that's normal. So being in a relationship, well, let's just go to coffee and hang out, that to me wasn't normal. That was something else. So for me, screaming and yelling and all that, just all that kind of stuff, that was something I was used to. So I think that for me, trying to find the exact opposite of that was really what sort of pushed me into a different realm of relationships, where realizing I don't have to continue in these patterns over and over and over in my life. And one of the things that I can say about when you hook up with some guy from the street life, he has a lot of time to pay attention to you. So if I'm texting some dude who's at work, he may not text me right back. He might not be able to get back to me, but if I'm texting some other dude, he might be able to get back to me and give me all that attention, and all the attention pumps you up and thinks, oh, he really likes me. But it's like, he might just not have a job. I mean, he might not, he might just be trying to lay those little traps and put out the little traps to whoever's going to fall in them. So, and women do that too. I'm not saying that we're,
That seems to be systematic. Little traps all over the place. I see people, street people, they get over on people so quick. And it's all over with in a minute. But you know what? I'm reading your book again, and it says right here, it wasn't long before then I started telling him I wanted to apply to Princeton. You actually went to the University of Cincinnati, right?
I went to University of Cincinnati, and then I dropped out because of drugs.
The admissions counselor had told me in my interview that you're a one-of-a-kind student. Little did she know how true that was and how you would turn out. Tell me something. When you go through ordeals like this and you're doing interviews and people come up with your past, how do you feel knowing that you still have to get this something to go forward? Where do you get that strength from?
Well, I mean, I've been through it. So I walked through it and had to carry that around with me for so long. Talking about it doesn't necessarily bother me that much anymore. I think some people, they change their life and then they just don't want to talk about it. I think for me, I don't mind talking about it because I know that it makes a difference. So if one person listening thinks, well, if she got off drugs, then I know I can get off drugs. Or if she got off drugs, this is what happened. Then that's
wow. This is trasdacious. I like that big word. Don't know what it means, but it's something. I'm looking at chapter 4 here. Walk a day in my shoes. You want to talk about that a little bit when you tell people that? When do you tell people, they need to walk a day in your shoes? What triggers that? What makes you feel? How do you feel when you say that? And what do you look for an outcome of that?
Well, I mean, through my writing, I try to give people the experience of what it's like being a drug addict and the struggle on a daily basis, and then also the things that are going on in my mind. So I think that one of the things that in particular I tried to get into is what I'm seeing, what I'm thinking, what, just the smells and the sights and the different kind of things that were going on. And in early recovery, so that book is about sort of my early recovery and having to deal with the fact that I would run into, from the time that I was a prostitute, I would run into old customers, even though I wasn't even a prostitute that long. I'd run into these people, and it was almost like I had no ownership of myself. People would insist on coming up to me. It's like, it's clear I've put on 50 pounds, I'm not on drugs anymore, but they still would harass me. And that particular instance, you know, I'm at the ATM and the guy decides he's going to come up to me. It's like, I don't need your money. Just leave me alone. But there, you know, as for me being a woman and having gone through the sort of drug life, selling drugs, being, you know, being in prostitution and all these different kind of things, there's a lot to recover from. So I had to really look at systematically how I could boost my self-esteem. And part of that for me is being able to share my experience and let people know that even though I was a drug addict, I'm just like everybody else. I feel the same kind of things. I experience the same kind of things. And I think that I'm not so different than a lot of people. I think that the path that I went down might be different, but the things that I went through led me to that place. And I think that especially now in the United States, we all know someone that has a drug problem. If we personally don't have a drug problem, there's somebody close to you that has a drug problem or alcohol problem. No one is left immune to that. And so trying to get an understanding of what it is like for that person, you know, through my writing is something that I try, you know, that's the place I try to get to, is for people to have an understanding through my writing.
Here's something. What page is this? This is on page 81. My name is Tracey. I'm struggling to stay clean. I stumbled on these simple words, but kept going. I know what this life has in store for me if I go back to using drugs, but I don't know how to go forward either. That's powerful.
And it's true. I mean, the side effect of relapsing for a lot of people is death. So
Whoa. Say that again.
The side effect for relapse for a lot of people is death. So your tolerance goes down. You use drugs, you think you can use the same amount, or you're using somewhere where no one's going to help you, and you overdose and die. Or you know, I've seen it numerous times in my life. People very, very close to me have you know, gotten off drugs. People thought they were doing really well. Then they find them dead somewhere because they relapsed and they went off somewhere and they were using and they died. And so you know, when I got out of the rehab facility, the sober living place I lived was on, you know, in the Tenderloin on Turk between Jones and Leavenworth. And so I was literally right where I used to sell drugs and right where I used to use. So everything was in my face constantly. Drugs in my face, pimps in my face, you know, just everything in my face, you know, constantly. Anything I could have possibly wanted to get into, if I was interested, was all there. But I really had to find the strength within myself, and part of that was, you know, going to support groups and finding other people who were like myself, you know, which can be challenging. But you know, finding a place where I could talk and feel free to talk. So now a lot of people seem to go through the channels of finding people on the internet. I get contacts sometimes, like yesterday I think I got, you know, yesterday was my sober birthday, so I got like 300 messages. Some days I get 50 messages. So, you know, I get contacted by strangers every single day. Just morning I got a message from somebody, I don't know, I relapsed last week, I don't know how to stay clean. It's really a struggle to find someone that you feel like you can talk to that's not going to judge you, and so I do that for a lot of people. But you know, there definitely needs to be more of that. And I think that when a person has used drugs and they have this incident where they may have gone back temporarily, the guilt and shame makes you want to continue forward with using drugs because, oh, they're going to judge me, and you know, people are going to yell at me. It's true, they might, but more than anything, I was worried about the actual, if I used drugs, I would die. Like, if I used drugs, I would be like, you know, various friends that I had that were found dead in different locations around San Francisco because they relapsed and they died. And that was, it was a huge motivating factor for me because I really wanted to live. I mean, live and enjoy my life without the use of drugs, and that's, you know, what happened. But it was a, you know, as a process.
Wow. A lot of the people that sell drugs on the street, are they using soup?
They might not be using what they're selling, but they might be using something. So I mean, so I used to sell drugs for, for people, and they didn't see themselves as they would do coke and watch soccer, or they would, drink a lot. I think it's very hard to be. It's very scary selling drugs on the street. So it's almost hard not to be on something, because the possibilities of you getting shot or stabbed or having something happen to you are very, very real. Or robbed. I mean, I've had people put knives to my throats, and I've seen guns, stabbings, all kinds of shootings, all kinds of stuff. So I think that there's a certain amount of medication go into it, but they might not necessarily be using the drugs that they're selling, because that becomes very, very complicated, because then you start becoming your number one customer, and you're actually supposed to be making money. No matter who you're selling drugs for, you owe money to somebody.
Is that the way a cycle goes?
You owe money to somebody.
It's a cycle.
Yeah, it's a cycle. I think and a lot of times when you're selling drugs, you have people around you who become dependent on the money that you're making. So it might not just be that you're selling drugs, but I need to tear my mom off some money, or I have this person over here who, I mean, in my case, not my mom, but I had like a boyfriend. I had different people who were dependent on the money I was making. I need a place to stay or whatever. In my whole life I have known very few people who sold drugs who ever got to keep any of the money. It usually went to the lawyer or someone else. I mean, very.
Wait a minute, let's back up again. Say that again, because a lot of people think there's all this profit and profiteering in selling drugs. That's a fallacy out there. That's a figment of imagination, am I right?
I personally have never known but a few people who made money selling drugs and actually got to keep it. It always, the money always flowed upward to someone else. So,
right.
I mean, like, I would make $500,000 a day selling drugs, but the portion I got to keep was very small. It all flowed up to somebody else. So I might be able to get some drugs and maybe a room for the night, but other than that, I didn't really I might be able to buy myself a Nestle Quick and a cinnamon roll, but I mean, I didn't really have a ton of money. I mean, some of these places you can make a ton of money, but when you get busted, where's that money going to go, and how can you launder all that? I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that goes into it. I mean, there definitely is money to be made, but not for people like myself who are, strung out like a lab monkey.
But money is critical and crucial, huh?
And I had, I said, wow.
And I want to say to you, of a lot of the stuff that I look at and do for research on the show, this is one of the first books that I've ever got interested in and was able to relate, because I lived on the street when I was a kid for a whole year, and I hitchhiked this whole country, so I saw a lot. And the element of people today is the same as it was yesterday, with the exception that people today are a little bit more fractured and they're a little bit more out there. Here I see chapter 5, the quick fix. Quick fix, you want to explain that to me? Is there a quick fix?
Well, I think that's a lot of times what people are looking for. They, in a relationship, they want to get the next best thing. So I say I wasn't looking for Mr. Right, I was looking for Mr. Right now. And so
Wait, whoa, back up. Mr. Right Now.
Yes.
I've never heard that.
So I mean, a lot of times you say you're looking for Mr. Right, but then you take Mr. Right Now. You take whoever comes around. Mr. Right doesn't even have any room because you're already with somebody. You're already with some lame that you're whatever.
You know what? That passage right there should be exploded in an atom bomb all over this damn country. It should be in flyers from blimps and planes, and that is the one thing that everybody misses. Am I right?
Yes.
They're with Mr. Right Now, but not Mr. Right. So Mr. Right doesn't have any space.
No, there's no space.
That's a good way of putting that, dear.
So that's definitely part of the quick fixes. Food, using food as a fix. I'm stressed out, so I stuff my face, or people smoke, or they do all these negative things. Trying to take shortcuts to get to where they think they need to be. And so for me, they're really there really is no quick fix. And so it was a lot of work. Like even now, I've lost 30 pounds since last summer, and a lot of that
Whoa, say that again?
I've lost 30 pounds since last summer.
That's some good stuff.
Oh yeah, and a lot of that is because, I would fix my feelings with food. So I went from, drugs and relationships to then fixing my feelings with food. So I'd come home from work, I'd be stressed out, I'd stuff my face, and then you're tired, and then you don't have to deal with stuff. But it's like I found out that I'm doing that for so long in my life that it really keeps me from being the person that I want to be, being active, and also doing the stuff I want to do. And so it's been like a struggle. And then shopping, you can really get into anything. You can get into, spending all your time on the internet. People in early recovery from drugs, a lot of times they get into porn or they get into different things, trying to find something so they don't have to deal with themselves. So a lot of times, trying to deal with yourself is sitting on your hands and listening and trying, having some quiet time, trying to figure out what it is that you're going to do. And that's a struggle for people. So for me, it's not just about the drug addiction, it's about all the other stuff that went into it too.
Is there a process in there where you beat yourself up?
Oh, absolutely. I'm definitely my own worst enemy. Sometimes it's like I was saying earlier, it's hard for me to even leave the house because I'm so judgmental. But then I just have to let stuff go. And I think, having lived in the street life and been homeless and had all kinds of things, it's really hard at first to build relationships and to trust other people. But I think over time, some of those masks have come down, but not necessarily all of them.
You've been clean how many years now?
19.
19 years.
Yes.
So, you just had a birthday, right?
Yes. Yesterday.
How did you feel?
So, good. I feel really good. I mean, it's hard to believe that I was that person, but then again, I absolutely believe it because I have the scars to prove it. So, I have all kinds of scars all over my legs, my arms, but I feel like it's also an opportunity for me to do stuff for other people because I'm not struggling. I'm not at the same point of struggling like I was back then. And part of feeling grateful is then doing things for other people. And I think that, I was so freely given love and support that I also try to give other people love and support and carry on that chain. So, but the 19 years, it's so strange. It's like I woke up in another person's life sometimes. Because I definitely remember the feeling of laying there on my wool blanket and the San Francisco fog would roll in. So I'd be sleeping with like 2 or 3 pairs of pants on, like 8 shirts, because, I wouldn't have a proper jacket. And having like a couple drinks of a 40 ounce next to me. And
that seems to be the thing. I see 40 ounce bottles all over the street.
Well, if you're homeless, you got to keep warm and you got to keep socially lubricated. Part of the thing with alcohol use on the street a lot of times is that's a social outlet for people. So they don't have the money to drink in bars, but they want to be social, so they stand out with a tall can and a paper bag or a 40 ounce, and that's their social outlet. They don't have the ability to go to some of the places to go. They can't have anyone in their house because they live in a room. They can't go out to bars because they can't afford it. So a lot of times, the poor man's social outlet is to be drinking on the street, and then that's also their medication. So their way of dealing with depression or whatever is to medicate with alcohol.
I'm looking at the book, page 113. It says a new sense of self. That sounds like a revelation. That sounds like you've gotten to the top of the mountain, so to speak. That feels like, to me, listening to and reading this, that you actually feel good about yourself. Am I right? It was work. I started to feel, I think, a couple years in, I started to really feel better about myself, but it took a lot of time. But I definitely, when about a month off of dope, you definitely feel a lot better. But then, there's like sort of unraveling all the different kinds of pieces of your life that you have going on and how you're going to make that work. I'm looking at this other passage, and it says here, this is on 121,
how I'm trying to cram this stuff in here. As I walked up to the table, I felt myself burst with pride. "Name, please," said the man. I had a nondescript face in a cheap sweater. The computers were lined up against the wall. 5 advisors per 5 students in a row of tables. "Tracey Lynn Helton," I told him. It sounded like you had just reached some part of vindication with your own psychological mind and where you were and where you wanted to go. Am I right?
So that story is actually when they told me I couldn't go to school.
Okay.
So that was the first time I cried in recovery. So I went up there to the tables.
But you were going, you were trying.
I was trying, and then
And most people don't try.
and they told me I couldn't get in that school, and so I had to go through college through an ex-offender program that ended up getting me into school. So that was, so that was really, really one of the worst parts of my early life in recovery was me thinking I'm really doing something, and then me showing up, and then them telling me that I couldn't get into the school. So
But you felt pretty good about yourself. My comment was, that was the idea, am I right? You felt
I felt good until they told me I couldn't get in, and then
Okay.
it was like, so that was like one of the things that really helped me get off drugs, was thinking I'm going to go back to school, I'm going to try to get my life back together. And then when they had taken that away from me, and that's the experience of a lot of people that that get off drugs, is they're told no a lot. I know you can't have this job, no you can't live here, and so how do you deal with that? And so it's not just about feeling good about yourself, it's about the resilience to take no's, because you're going to hear
You
no.
have to be resilient.
Yes.
Radio.
Have to be.
Dementia. The sounds of the mission.
You know, I always like to bring in final stuff, and good stuff, positive elements. It says right here, when I finally returned to the campus for my first day of classes, it was a warm summer evening. I had left my place a little early because I knew how crowded the train out to the campus could be. I stopped at the coffee shop and got myself a chai tea and a snack. He said I was not going to be caught unprepared at this time. I think synonymously of what we've said of your trek and your travel and going forward, I think this is like something that made you feel really, really good in the end. Am I right?
Yes. So I went to school for part-time and full-time for 9 years, and I got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, and it really, it made me feel good about myself. I wasn't even sure I could think when I got off drugs. I used to use a lot of crystal meth, so I wasn't even sure if I could put a sentence together, which I couldn't barely the first month. But then to be able to, achieve things really made a huge difference in my life and in my recovery.
Well, the thing about it all is the fact that you did it.
I did.
I mean, you did it.
I did it.
And you know what? This is why we have you on Thoughts of a Common Man right here in the mission, because we know that there are people like you who actually want success, go for success, and you know what? It takes guts. Period. Am I right?
Yeah. Yes.
Just that's all it is. It takes some guts to go out there and say, I want to kick this shit and get out here and do what I need to do in life and go on in life.
Well, I would say it takes guts to live in the street life. It's very hard, and you can use that same determination to get yourself clean and try a different life. If I can do it, anybody can do it, really.
But you got 3 kids and a husband now,
I do.
and you feel damn good about yourself.
I do. I have a good life.
And that's what we're all about.
Okay.
Okay, that's what we've been talking about for the last 2 hours. You want to put some numbers out there how people can contact you, or if you got a contact, or you want to do things for people, or however, or whatever.
So if people want to get a hold of me, I'm Tracey Tracey TRACEYH as in hot 415 on Instagram. That's my Gmail. That's pretty much the best. That's my blog is TraceyH415 at blogspot.com. It's the best way to get a hold of me. If you put in TraceyH415, anything you want to know about me is going to come up. So I'm, and I'm on Reddit, the same, TraceyH415 on Reddit. So if anyone wants to get a hold of me, that's the best way to contact me.
And you know, we're gonna back out of here in a minute, and I just wanna say thank you for calling in today, the people who called in, and thank you for everybody listening. And we bring you people that help people, and we're gonna want you to pass that on, you know, helping people, loving people, and, you know, resorting to, you know, supporting people with love and compassion. This is the Chief. We're gonna back out of here.